Words of Joy and Hope. It is the 13th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year B, and it is the Gospel of Mark, chapter 5, verse 21 to 43. And the commentary is by Father Fernando Armelini. A good Sunday for all. In today's Gospel text, two episodes of healing done by Jesus are narrated, juxtaposed, one inside the other. At the beginning, Jairus is introduced. He approaches Jesus, asking him to intervene because his daughter is dying. Then the scene is interrupted because a woman arrives who has a loss of blood. She touches the mantle of Jesus and is healed. Then the narration is resumed with the resuscitation of the daughter of Jairus. We are certainly facing a story of two extraordinary healings performed by Jesus. We will not dwell on the material data of what has happened in both episodes, but we will look for the answer to the message, that it is the only thing that Mark is interested in communicating to us. To understand this message, we must pay attention to the symbolic language, to the biblical images that the evangelist uses. Let us mention some of these images. First of all, two women appear on the scene, to which we add a number that we know very well is a very significant in the Bible. It's number 12. The daughter of Jairus is 12 years old, and the woman has been with blood loss for 12 years. The evangelist insists a lot on this number, and therefore he wants to refer to something that we also understand immediately. He's referring to the people of Israel, who in the Bible are presented as a woman, a fruitful woman, who received the promise of the Lord to Abraham that these people will be fruitful and numerous like the stars of the firmament, for he has received the blessing of the Lord. Blessing in the Bible means giving life. The first blessing we find in the Bible is this: the Lord blesses you, saying, grow and multiply, populate the earth. This is the blessing that God gave to Abraham. And this woman, is fruitful because she has received the blessing of the Lord. This is the first reference made by the evangelist through the number 12, and also the fact that they are two women. Then the woman has its own meaning in the Bible, because it is she who gives life. Everything speaks of life in women. Recall the beginning of Genesis, when the man calls the woman Chava, Eve, and the narrator derives the name from the root Hayao Oihai, which means life. What happens in these two episodes? That we have two women who are losing their lives. The one that had blood loss for 12 years sees her life go away, because that's the meaning of blood, life. She cannot do anything. She's sterile. The Jairus' young daughter is becoming to an age of being able to be a mother, to give life, but her life is interrupted, and she cannot have posterity. Who do these two women represent? We must read these two episodes, which really happened. Jesus has healed these two women, but the evangelist wants us to read these episodes as a parable of the life that Jesus comes to give. And if you do not find Jesus, if you cannot find him, the one who can give this life, then the blessing over a numerous posterity ends, and ends in death. As time goes by, we notice that life runs out until finally it disappears. So now the question, who can block this loss of life? All the time that passes is life that goes away. Can someone interrupt this destruction of life? And also, who can give a life that is really lasting? Let us listen to the first story. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around him, and he stayed close to the sea. One of the synagogue officials, named Jairus, came forward. Seeing him, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, saying, "My daughter is at the point of death. Please come, lay your hands on her, that she may get well and live." He went off with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed upon him. Remember that last week Jesus had left by boat with his disciples from Capernaum towards the east, towards the pagan land. The evangelical text of today tells us that they came back from Gerasa to Capernaum. And when he arrives in Capernaum, a large crowd was waiting for him. And in the midst of this crowd, there is one who advances because she wants to find Jesus immediately, as fast as possible. It is Jairus, known by all, because he is the official of the synagogue of Capernaum. When Jairus finds Jesus, he prostrates at his feet, making a significant gesture. It is the recognition of one's impotence in front of death that is coming to take his daughter. He has given life to this daughter, but now he cannot do anything. This life disappears. He is also the representative of the official religion, and even his religion does not give him an answer to this problem of death. He has understood that only Jesus can do something to prevent the victory of that monster that wants to kidnap his daughter. And he says to Jesus, "Come and impose your hands so that she will be saved and live." Man does not generate another life, only the one that is destined for death, the biological life. Every birth adds the number of mortals. Death always comes destroying everything. Man can postpone this defeat, but not avoid it. The fact that Jairus prostrates before Jesus means that man has only this biological life that comes from nature, and this biological life ends with death, like all biological life. If you do not find someone who can give a life that is not touched by death, then the victory of death will be final. Notice that next to Jairus, there is a large crowd that surrounds Jesus. Who follows Jesus? But it is not enough to be around Jesus to receive this life that he can give. There are many, even today, those who are around Jesus, who expect help from him. But I think that many, those who are around Jesus, even today, do not seek from him the life he wants to give, but they expect from him something that is still related with biological life, the life that is destined to perish. And now we see that in the middle of this crowd appears a woman who does not want to be noticed. She approaches Jesus in a different way from others. She seeks from Jesus what he has come to give, to show how not to lose life. Let us listen to the narration. There was a woman afflicted with hemorrhages for 12 years. She had suffered greatly in the hands of many doctors and had spent all that she had. Yet she was not helped, but only grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. She said, "If I but touch his clothes, I shall be cured." Immediately her flow of blood dried up. She felt in her body that she was healed of her afflictions. Jesus, aware at once that power had gone out from him, turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who has touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to Jesus, "You see how the crowd is pressing upon you, and you ask, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. The woman, realizing what had happened to her, approached in fear and trembling. She fell down before Jesus and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be cured of your affliction." I have already mentioned the symbolism of blood in Israel and throughout the Semitic world. It indicates life. That is why the Israelites do not eat the strangled animals, because they first have to take the blood, return it to the earth, returned to God. It is a way of recognizing that life comes and belongs to God. This woman had blood loss. She is losing life. It is the image of all humankind that does nothing but lose life. Since we are born, our life is heading towards loss. Every moment that passes is life that is lost. Then the question, will it be possible to retain this life that escapes us? We see it going away. There are other solutions. I can spend my time in any way and just call it life. But Jesus came to interrupt this flow of life that is going away. This biological life is ending. Jesus, what did the doctors do? In fact, this woman had gone to doctors who tried to retain the biological life. They can only delay the defeat. Solutions are thought as hibernation, cloning, are all efforts that are made to overcome death. Some are willing to give all their money, as this woman did, so as not to lose life. But as Psalm 49 says, No matter what you pay, you can never rescue your life and live forever. Humans must always resign themselves to defeat. The problem is how to retain this life that goes away. The woman is alone in the middle of that crowd. She understood that she must touch Jesus. If she reaches his mantle, life will stop, will not end. Pay attention to this mantle. Clothing is a biblical symbol, is the external manifestation of the person in the prolongation of our body, is what they see of us, and indicates, therefore, the whole person, our appearance, our actions, our very life. Remember how Paul speaks of putting on Christ. It means that each one have to make the person of Christ transparent in us. This is the clothing. Jesus uses this very beautiful image when he says that his disciples should put on a new dress, not a new part in an old dress. This dress, this mantle, which the woman wants to touch, is nothing other than the humanity of Jesus, that humanity of which the Son of God has been clothed. It is this humanity that must be touched if we want life to stop flowing and be durable. Later, the evangelist Mark, at the end of chapter 6, talks about touching even the edge of his cloak. When they were entering the town, the people were all around him, and they wanted to touch the edge of his cloak. What was this mantle edge? Jesus dressed as an observant Hebrew and wore the mantle that had been made according to the rules of the Torah, which provided that 4 fringes should be placed on the 4 corners of the mantle. 4 ties, which symbolized the availability of the pious Jew to always observe the Torah. Today, this mantle, this tali, is used only when the Torah is read during prayers. But in Jesus' time, this was the mantle that was used. What does the woman want to do? She wants to touch even the fringe of this mantle. Touch, even if only a little, of the humanity of Jesus, and avoid losing her life. And now we begin to understand what it means to touch this humanity of Jesus, how the Son of God has appeared. He is the one who said, if you do not want to lose your life, give it out of love. This is the secret to not losing your life. It is not about enjoying it, trying to spend it according to what the instinct asks you, what pleases you. If so, you lose it, and you will not keep anything. If you really want to retain your life, give it away, donate it. If you touch this humanity of Jesus, you will not be losing your life. To be saved does not mean to reach heaven after a good confession. It means I will not lose my life, and therefore what is important is to be saved as soon as possible, because in the end, life will be lost. The disciples that are at Jesus' side tell him, "You see how the crowd is pressing upon you and you still ask, 'Who touched me?'" Jesus tells them, "I am not talking about that kind of touch." Here we have an important application for our communities that are many times convinced to truly touch Christ, to approach His gospel, and actually they are only close to Him. Think of certain village festivals, they are good things, but this does not mean touching Jesus, or certain devotional practices. Touching Jesus means committing to receive, to take the divine force that comes from Him, that is the life given. The woman, when Jesus asks, "Who has touched me?" the woman is afraid. She wants to disappear because Jesus asks what happened. She is with fear because she has made a transgression. She has moved away from tradition. In order to touch Jesus, she must have risked being condemned by the traditional religious conception that commanded to avoid the impure. They had instilled the conviction that God does not want to have anything to do with the impure. And she goes on and confesses to Jesus the whole truth. What truth did she confess? She said in front of everyone that it was not tradition that had given her back her life, but it was touching Jesus. This touch had blocked her from losing her life. The message for us is extremely important. If we want to retain our life, let us touch Christ. Let us touch His surrendered life. And this life that is not lost is blocked. The response that Jesus gives to this woman is very beautiful. He calls her daughter. In the midst of all that crowd, only she is called daughter. Son is one who resembles the Father, the one in whom the Father recognizes His own face. This woman is called daughter because, having touched the life of Christ, she resembles Him. Faith consists in accepting Jesus' proposal to donate life. Your faith has saved you. Faith does not consist in believing that Jesus was good, that He existed. Faith consists in touching the humanity of Jesus. Jesus tells her, "Go in peace and be cured of your affliction." Go towards the shalom, towards joy, towards life. We have understood that by donating life, one avoids losing it. This is the life that will give real joy. And now the text continues with the healing of Jairus' daughter. While he was still speaking, people from the synagogue official's house arrived and said, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" Disregarding the message that was reported, Jesus said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid, just have faith." He did not allow anyone to accompany him inside except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they arrived at the house of the synagogue officials, he caught sight of a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. So he went in and said to them, "Why this commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." And they ridiculed him. Then he put them all out. He took along the child's father and mother and those who were with him, and entered the room where the child was. He took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum." Talitha cum, que significa, it means, little child, I tell you, get up. The girl, a child of 12, arose immediately and walked around. She was 12 years old, and they all were utterly astounded. He gave strict orders that no one should know this, and said that she should be given something to eat. We have a second question about life. Not the gradual laws, but the ultimate laws. What happens to our life if we do not find Christ? At the end of everything, we will return to the dust from which we have left, we have come in from. And humanity can only pronounce the words of Jairus and resign themselves to the victory of death. Also, the believer sees that his life is being spent, even when it is a life given for others. The biological life is ending, and also in the believer, doubts may arise that he's losing life, that destiny is common to all, that death is the end of everything. And also in this believer, the thought may appear, will I not regret it if I donate all my life? Will I not regret not having enjoyed it? And you may be tempted to stop believing. And this is the recommendation that Jesus makes to Jairus. Do not fear, keep having faith. And when they arrive at the house of the synagogue officials, there reigns death, laments, and they tell Jairus that his daughter is dead. And they find the typical scene of the weeping mourners. It is what people do in the face of death. They only know how to make noise, to implore the sad destiny from which no one can escape. What does Jesus do? He says, what's the cause of this commotion, of those cries? The girl is not dead, but asleep. To sleep means to rest. After dreaming a new awakening to the new light with the touch of the Lord, to sleep after sleeping is an awakening with Him. It means that the reality of death is not definitive for those who have found Christ. If humanity had not found Christ, its destiny was dust. But if we meet Christ and we are touched by Him, death is asleep for an awakening. This is what Jesus says to those who follow Him, even if those who have questions about whether death has the final victory. Keep on believing. That's what Jesus says. And in fact, when Jesus speaks of sleep, everyone laughs. They make fun of Him. It is what often happens to the believer when they are being laughed at by those who do not allow themselves to be guided by the faith in Christ. The unbeliever despises the disciple of Christ while they promote new palliatives, a new illusory proposal to overcome this drama of the thought of death. We remember, for example, how Festus says to Paul in Caesarea, "You are crazy, Paul. So much studying has made you crazy." It's Acts 26:24, when he talks about the resurrection of a life that goes beyond death. The biological death continues its course. But Paul says there is another life that death does not touch. And what does Jesus do? He casts out everyone. He rejects the mourning, the embarrassment, the noise. Death is dramatized. The sadness must disappear. And Jesus takes with him only the Father, the Mother, and 3 disciples. Who are these? Because all others are asked to stay outside. Jesus wants the testimony of those who have given the biological life. What is it that is witness to? They will witness that the life that they have given ends. And then there are the 3 disciples who must bear witness of what Jesus does, the life that he is capable of giving. He comes in, takes the girl by the hand, and says, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I am telling you, get up." Egeire means to get up. And Jesus places her on her feet. The girl comes back to life. She gets up, walks. But Jesus adds, feed her. The life that Jesus gives, which is not the biological life, must be nourished. The food of this life is the word of Jesus of Nazareth. It is the word of the gospel that at all times feeds our existence that is not destined to perish. I wish everyone a good Sunday and a good week.